My name is Jonathan Brufal. I'm the head of international projects at Gowling WLG, and I'm delighted to moderate this discussion on renewable energy in the mining sector, with a particular focus on South Africa and its energy transition. South Africa stands at a pivotal juncture in its energy transition, and its goals are outlined in its Just Energy Transition Investment Plan. The plan sets out the scale and need of the investments required to achieve decarbonisation commitments in South Africa's nationally determined contribution. South Africa's updated NDC represents a significant progression from the first NDC and sets out its goal to reach net zero emissions by 2050. This, however, has got to be balanced with the fact that South Africa is still the most carbon-intensive economy in the G20. So there's a lot to do. And to look at how South Africa will do this, in the context of mining in particular, I'm delighted to introduce today's panel. First, I could introduce you to Mohloana Magwai. Mohloana is the Business Development Manager for the Minerals Division at Exxaro Resources. He has a wealth of experience in the field of mining and minerals. His role at Exxaro involves leading new business development initiatives, contributing to the company's strategy and business development deliverables. In recognition of his outstanding work, Mohloana was recently awarded the Accenture Rising Star Award. This award is a testament to his exceptional innovative thinking in the mining sector. The second panelist is Kgashane Mohale. He is currently the Head of Industry Planning and Project Development at the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa. Kgashane has a wealth of experience in the field of industrial development, particularly in the areas of innovation and strategy, and his role involves leading projects that are crucial for the growth and development of South Africa. And last but no means least, our final panelist is Gilles Dumont. Gilles is currently the Head of Business Development for on-grid and off-grid projects at Juwi Renewables Africa. He is an engineer and business development specialist with a focus on sustainability and decarbonisation in the mining sector. We will have some time for questions at the end, but if I could turn to the panel for the first question. Firstly, we would like to look at what the key infrastructure is needed to ensure a smooth and just energy transition. South Africa's decision to implement the New Works programme from COP28 shows South Africa has a clear motivation for a just transition. Mohloana, if I could start with you, please could you provide some insights into the key infrastructure and protections you see need to be in place for local communities in the mining and renewable energy sectors?
Thanks for the questions and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. If I just think about the coal industry in South Africa and its contribution towards job creation and employment, just under 100,000 people are employed by the coal industry. I've also seen a figure that shows that for every job in the coal mining industry, we have 6 to 8 jobs that are created to support the industry. So it's quite a significant number of people that are affected if the industry is under threat because of whatever changes may be happening because of the climate change headwinds. So the topic of protection for the local communities is an important one, given that most of those employed in the mining industry and the supporting industries actually come from the local communities. I've seen in some of our numbers where 60 to 70% of the employment comes from local communities. Now, in terms of protections that the communities will have, I think there's a lot that can be done between private sector and the government. But the way that we tend to think about it is that, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And what I mean by that is that the way that we're thinking about is that there's a lot of skills that the people who work for us in the coal industry that they get, and those skills are transferable and can be used even in the new sectors that come with the energy transition. And the way we think about it is, how do we enable our employees to have transferable skills that can be used elsewhere? We also, in terms of the small businesses in the communities that we use as part of our suppliers, to make sure that we enable them to be able to go elsewhere should things come to a stop. And in the mining industry, if you think about it, a mine by its very definition has a life of mine, and it has a finite life. And it is not abnormal to prepare for a mine coming to an end and for something else to be done. So in short, what I'm saying is that, yes, I think we should have the necessary protections, but the energy transition may be driven by market forces which we don't have control over. And with that in mind, our view is that the best protection may be to adapt.
Okay. I'm clearly part of the Just Transition Plan is to be inclusive and fair, but the plan also involves increased use of renewables, a fast transition away from coal, and investing in sectors like EVs and green hydrogen. Kgashane, in terms of IDC's involvement in the energy transition, what do you see as the key issues around the Just Transition?
Yeah, I think, to a large extent, I'd have to agree with Mohloana, right? Any industry is looking at some pretty serious disruptions, and that's across the board. But if you look at a national view, there are lots of opportunities hidden in there, but they're not going to happen by themselves, right? From a skills perspective, it requires reskilling, possibly moving across industries. I think moving geographically is obviously comes with a lot of other challenges, but I think a national view of the opportunity is a healthy one, and obviously we're in the fortunate position to have national development interests, right? So we have quite a few projects in the sector, in mining, in processing, in industry development. But where we are focusing our attention is on creating opportunities for participation in the new sectors, right? And we've got to move fast. You can't wait for the disruption to happen and then transition. We've got to build, in particular, the battery value chain pretty much now. Right? The window is short and it is closing, I know it's still a nascent industry, but there's a lot of movement around the world, capital projects being deployed all over, and they're all in the Northern Hemisphere. If we don't initiate now, then that window may close. So, it's a cross-sectoral approach for us. It goes beyond financing, but we have to look at things like policy, developing a local market, supporting exports, etc.
Okay. And Gilles, as a private sector developer of renewable energy projects, how do you see your involvement in the Just Transition in terms of bringing communities and all stakeholders along with you?
Okay. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for the question. Just before I answer your question, I want to say I agree with what you guys are saying, and I think there is a couple of infrastructure to be put in place both for the renewable energy as well as for the mining sector. And as you mentioned, there is, in the total mining sector, I think there are about 500,000 of people employed in South Africa for that, and you say it's 6 to 8 people are indirect job creation. So we're speaking easily about 3 or 4 million people that's actually employed just by the mining sector, which is about 10% of the South African GDP. So we have to develop a sustainable mining sector. And how do we do that? How do we make sure we keep them, profitable in the long term? So renewable could be an aspect, but having impact on the renewable or mining sector, you have a big impact on the economic and social environment. So what is key for me on the infrastructure to put in place is put the right regulation on ESIA to make sure that all the people that you're going to have to displace for solar project or for mining projects, or still have enough piece of lands for them to actually, if they're farming on it, to be able to farm and sustain themselves on the side of just getting an income. Because if they don't have piece of land to farm, then they can't have food after the end of the day. So that's one of the key aspects that, we always take in consideration when we develop our renewable energy project, to make sure who's going to be displaced, how they're going to be impacted, and what is, yes, we're going to give them a job, but what is impact on the community as a whole? Because if they have to drive another 60 km to go and farm, then it's actually going to impact them, the whole value chain. So that's one of the first aspects we're looking at. Then the second aspect is we're taking land away from this community. So how do we engage with them? How do they benefit from actually not having this land anymore? So about balance sharing mechanism of the profit of the plants. Because yes, it's going to sustain the mining sector, but it needs to sustain them as well. So we're looking at that as well. What's the short term, what's the long term, basically revenue that they can get from that and from taking away their cultural land. And then the last thing is, as you both mentioned, is like, how do we create more job creation? How do we create more hubs of economic development for them? We need to sustain the small businesses. So we take care of making sure that they have impact on the PV plant. So who is going to provide us with security on site? Who's going to provide us with the fencing, all these type of small items? So that's quite key. I would say the three keys that's market that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. And moving away from the just transition and coming on to the challenges that come with the move away from fossil fuels and the pace of the energy transition. As I said at the beginning, South Africa remains the biggest carbon emitting economy in the G20. As everyone will be aware, at COP28, countries were called on to contribute to the phase down of unabated coal power. If I could come back to you, Gilles, again, what do you see as the technical challenges moving away from fossil fuels, particularly in the mining sector, and what are the regulatory and time challenges that you're facing as a developer? Thank you.
When we work with traditional, I would say, thermal power plants and fossil fuel or grids, it's quite, proven technology, first of all, compared to some of the PV or battery systems that I've seen in the latest years. Secondly, it's a reliable source of power. When you got renewable energy, it's an intermittent source of power. So you have to compensate that by adding battery system or combine it with a thermal power plant. So we see that quite challenging because the way the mines operate, they need security of power. And, the grid or ESCOM or the thermal power plant gives them that sort of stability or redundancy. They can have a genset that only switch on when the other one fail. When you have a PV plant or a battery system, you can't just build another battery system on the side for the redundancy because it's upfront capex is going to be too high. So I believe, the quite challenges is to understand what is a balance of mix of thermal power, renewable battery systems that needs to be put in place. Now, taking that in consideration, your last part of your question was about the timeline. When you start implementing renewable energy projects, you from day one, so as Juwi, we do project development and building the plants and operation and maintenance. From inception of defining which piece of land you want to use to actually be able to start construction, you need a 24 months timeline because you need engage your community, as we discussed earlier. You need to develop all your permitting, and that's what's basically the big challenges we are. Because the mine needs power tomorrow, but we can't give it to them if they start today. So we need to have a long timeline.
Okay, thank you. And Kgashane, I know you touched earlier on talking about developing supply chains in South Africa. What particular issues do you see in the mining industry, which is dependent on the availability of resources and being able to develop a robust renewable energy supply chain?
Okay, so on the availability of resources, I think everybody's got that challenge. So it's probably more of an opportunity for us, right? But as I said, it doesn't happen by itself. So the big question that we have to solve for is that if we use, again, back to battery as an example, the value chain doesn't exist, so to speak, right? It's a lot of semi-related segments that we have to link together and develop. So our approach is to go from mining, which is a comparative advantage we have. You work with what you've got and develop it downstream as far as possible. And along the way, we make links. Right? Our role is to make the sector or the industry investable. So it's, for the likes of yourselves to be able to spot opportunities, knowing that, okay, there's, this database of projects, these are the partners, and we're securing offtake rights in all the projects we're working on, etc. So I don't know if you, I'm sure there's a flagship report published by the World Bank that got a map of the battery value chain, right? So we just took that and superimposed the projects that IDC has on the go right now and investments, and pretty much covers everything except in the middle, which is component manufacturing and cell manufacturing. So I think from a development perspective, we were approaching it from the market as well. You've got to stimulate the local market. We've got to support the transition to electric vehicles. We saw the publication of a white paper in December, I believe. And it goes to some extent in supporting that, or at least in providing a clearer picture of where government is going so that the automotive sector can make their own decisions. Right? The energy storage market is, it's not as big as other markets perhaps, but it is probably the most dynamic in the world. It is absolutely thriving, and we've got to harness that opportunity as well. So the challenge there for us is aggregating or just understanding the demand there. It's the private sector projects are not very visible to us. The IPP projects are erratic, and I don't know why, but it's still a surprise to us as well as a state-owned entity with, the direct, well, maybe not direct, but with relationships with government, But still, I understand their position, but I think it would help a long way if we could have line of sight and rely on that volume or offtake. And then the private sector can slot in, and the investors have a clearer view of what's investable and what's not.
Okay, no, and clearly, as a user of coal power, the move away from coal is a significant challenge for the government here. It obviously has a very successful renewable energy program, but that can only go so far in terms of accelerating the move away from coal. If I could come to you, Mohloana, first, but I'd like a view from each of the panelists. Just really to see what your view on transition technologies such as gas and the role that will play in the energy transition in South Africa. Now, clearly there have been attempts by the government to develop gas-to-power programs previously. Some of the issues around it, obviously, LNG and gas is a dollar commodity, and there are challenges around dollarizing the South African economy. I just welcome your views on sort of transition technologies other than wind, solar, and storage.
Yeah, thank you. So, Exxaro Resources, we're a mining company. We're one of the biggest suppliers of thermal coal to Eskom, the power utility in South Africa. And the transition obviously has serious implication for us, given that our product is one that is seen as polluting. With that, we've started a renewable energy business a while back, and we've got 2 wind farms. We're building a solar plant. And then part of the thinking is that given that we have so much dependence on thermal coal, part of our thinking is that the transition is probably going to be a little bit longer for us here in South Africa, given as you said, we have so much dependence on coal. And for us, a good transition is around gas, given that it does have some advantages from. Now you're listening to a miner talking about power, but from our understanding, there are advantages in having some of these transition technologies. And it's part of what our renewable team is thinking about in terms of having it within the mix, not just only the bread and butter renewable technology. So definitely one to consider.
Thank you. And Gilles, do you have any thoughts on gas and its introduction into the economy?
Yeah, I mean, gas has been very scarce in South Africa lately, and I think it's going to be a big new, let's say, waves of LNG to power plants happening in the country. I mean, we've seen some tenders that are going to come out from, I believe, the public sector coming in. So there's going to be quite a push for, let's say, virtual pipelines and gas to power station for both, large users like such mines or other smelter or industries. So I think there's going to be, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, there's going to be a right mix between various sources of powers. So gas will play a bigger role that it used to play in the past, and with a push of combining with any other source of power. Really, can be renewables or non-renewables, but I think it's gonna change dramatically in the next couple of 3 to 5 years.
Okay, and Kgashane, do you see any particular challenges in the sort of dollarization issues that come with embracing gas as an energy transition source in South Africa?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to what the guys say here, but I think those are fairly obvious from a fiscus perspective, exchange rate, and we've got to compete at a global level as well. That's the angle that gas brings, right? At the same time, we've got a pretty big green hydrogen program. Maybe that's another technology to add to the mix. We've got 19 projects that are recognized by government as strategic, and but a lot more being supported. So I think there's some good opportunities there to harness our natural resources, our green, clean resources to convert into something else, and that could bring in some foreign currency as well. So it could help the dollarization impact in a way.
So touching on green hydrogen, I probably should declare my position as something of a skeptic on green hydrogen and the ability to commercialize it. There is a lot of talk wherever you are in the world about the advantages of green hydrogen. Given the commitments to net zero by 2050, some of the technological challenges about green hydrogen, do you think that is something of a red herring for the country's energy transition, or do you think it will offer a real technology to switch away from coal? Gilles, maybe if I start with you on that.
No, I'll take it first.
Oh, you can take it first, please.
Anything that's 20 years out is a red herring to some people, and you've got to have some advocates here and there, otherwise it's just not going to happen. You might as well write it off now. I drove a hydrogen car in China in November.
Right.
It's pretty awesome. And they've gone the whole way. They've got infrastructure around Shanghai where you can refill your hydrogen vehicle. I can't recall the numbers, but it's something like 10,000 stations in one city. It's like a ridiculous scale. They've sold, this one I remember, 694,000 hydrogen vehicles. I'm not sure over what period. It could be over the last 3 or 4. But, and they're calling it a pilot, right? But it is going. It is happening. It's far from being commercially viable. But I think even there it is state-sponsored, right? So the question is valid, but can you afford not to go there?
No, a fair point. Mohloana, I don't know whether or Gilles, if you want to come in. Green hydrogen, do you see it playing a significant role?
Yeah, I think we need to set the what you want to do with that green hydrogen first before you describe if it's going to be feasible or not. I mean, what's the market for it? What is it? South African market for the car industry, or is it liquid hydrogen to go and send to Europe? So that will define actually if it's viable in the short term in South Africa, because I'm a bit like you. I mean, I'm a bit skeptical about having green hydrogen being shipped to Europe for the core markets, because there are going to be other countries between us and Europe that's going to go and supply the same product. If it's for the South African market, I think it could be viable in the long term, but it's going to take times to happen. I mean, it's always, as you say, it's not commercially viable yet. But I mean, in China, they do project which we believe is not commercially viable, but it is for them. I mean, if I take the example of vanadium flow batteries, we're struggling to get the vanadium flow batteries happening in South Africa, where they have multiple hundred of megawatts in China already in operation. So it all depends where you are. But I think it will come, but in the long term and for a specific sector.
Okay.
And that sector might not be, okay, and of the 19 projects, I don't think any of them are looking at supplying into the automotive sector. I think it's all industrial applications.
Okay. And obviously with challenges come opportunities for all. And I just wanted to focus now on what the panelists see as the opportunities they see presenting South Africa from the shift to green energy and what's in it for South Africa. Mohloana, if I could start with you, from a mining company's perspective, is diversification imperative for mining companies' survival? What other opportunities do you see the green shift bringing?
Yeah, thanks. So as I said earlier, Exxaro is a coal mining company. We're one of the largest suppliers to Eskom, the power utility. And obviously the question of energy security for the country is an important one, and for us as a company to be contributing to that. So that's the one hand. On the other hand, there is the reality that the CO2 emissions and the climate change impact is real, and we see ourselves as a responsible citizen locally as well as globally to contribute towards reducing those emissions. And we've had to think long and hard internally as a company around how do we navigate this dilemma of meeting the local needs, but at the same time, being globally relevant in terms of what is happening with the climate change. And our landing on this is that we have a coal business, and that coal business is needed in the country, and we will protect that business and make sure that it meets the country's needs. With that, we've announced a few years back that we will not invest any more new expansion capital into thermal coal, recognizing that there is a need for the transition. With that, as I said, we have a renewable energy leg, which we intend to invest significantly into. And then we also have a drive to diversify into other minerals and energy transition minerals. We've started and we've announced, this is all public knowledge, we've announced that the minerals that we're starting out is manganese, it's copper, and it's bauxite. And with that, I think it presents opportunities for us to invest in the opportunities in South Africa, but also in the Southern African region where these commodities exist. So challenges, yes, but also I think what we see and we're excited about is the opportunities that this transition presents in terms of the need for these minerals that are required in order to make the energy transition a reality. And what we're also seeing is that as we pursue these opportunities, there's opportunities to partner with other South African institutions, whether it's miners or financial institutions, to work together in addressing these challenges, but also capturing the opportunities.
Great. Thank you. And Kgashane, again, we've touched on batteries developing supply chains. Now, in the UK, where I am from, there's definitely a pivot away from partnering with the Far East on the development of supply chains. Do you see that as an opportunity for South Africa to develop robust supply chains to help deliver the energy transition with countries from the Far East?
To develop with the Far East?
Yeah, or alongside them?
Look, it would be nice to say we are neutral, right? I think at a business level, which we operate at, despite being state-owned, we work with business people, with organizations. So you've got to grab the opportunities as they pop up, and I think it's important to position South Africa as possibly an alternative, and that's across industries. Right? I believe we've always had a great balance of price and quality. Right? It all went to China, and then the high-tech stuff stays in Europe and North America. But we've traditionally had the capacity or the capability to play in that middle spot, and I think it might be a little bit more obvious now. But it's something we should have always exploited, and we didn't do a great job at it. So I don't know if that necessarily means opportunities for us now.
Okay.
We got to make work of it. You know?
Well, thank you. And Gilles, obviously, as a renewable energy developer, what do you see as the clear opportunities for the economy in terms of the green transition?
I mean, the first, I'm saying a couple of them opportunities, but the first main one is, all the construction needs that's going to happen out of these renewable energy projects. So all the labor intensive or yellow machinery that's going to need to happen. So it's going to be a massive new shift into the construction industry that can actually now not only do infrastructure, but can do like PV plants and other type of systems. So it's a big opportunity for the market to grow. And I believe we're going to be in the short term in the shortage of this type of industry, because if we scale at the pace that some of these IBPs or tenders coming out, public tenders coming out, then we're not going to have enough people in country to actually, or companies in country to actually do the work. So that's a big needs for that. In terms of value chain on the component section, I mean there is already, and there's things that are going to be more value added into the steel industry, providing all the steel required for the PV plants, for example, or the wind turbines. There was a factory already built up for steel wind turbine towers in South Africa. That's still in operation, I believe. All the tracker system are now can be supplied directly from South Africa. In terms of module and solar panels, they've been factory in place already in the past. There's two suppliers at the moment in South Africa, which not part of the tier one, so a bit difficult for some of the lenders to actually accept. But there was other company like such major tier one who actually set up in the country in the past, and because of the lack of consistency from the government, they actually pull out of the country. So if I had a message to say is like, if you want the industry to carry on supporting South Africa, you need to be consistent in your message and actually deliver the projects you plan in your IRP plan or any of these things. And that's why South Africa, in a sense, missed the first wagon, but the train is still passing by, so we can still catch it.
And just a general question to the panel. Do you feel that the government is doing enough in terms of creating an enabling environment to allow the private sector to play its part in the energy transition? Gilles?
So can you repeat that?
So do you feel the government is doing enough to create an enabling environment to enable the private sector to play its part in the energy transition?
You don't want IDC to answer first. No?
Well, I'll have to look around first. Of course,
Chatham House rules, obviously.
No, I think the honest answer is no. Why is the question? But there are lots of challenges making political decisions at an industrial level. I think there's a lot of things that don't align. We've been on the receiving end of frustrations on both sides.
Right.
So I don't want to go into the details of it, but it's a difficult spot to try and mediate and support the industry when there's a clear solution, but the wheels is turning very slow. We can do a lot better, I think, and that's probably where we're losing out now. Is that we're not far behind. Well, no, let me rephrase. the East is far ahead of everybody else. So we're not necessarily far behind Europe and North America from a battery perspective, right? But the progress they've made in the last year or two is what is threatening our potential to participate in that value chain. They're also looking east for technology partners, etc. You know, so we were all in the same boat a year or two ago.
Great. Thank you. And then, as our final topic, obviously, energy transition comes at a cost, and someone's going to have to pay for this. Financing the energy transition is crucial. And I'd just like to ask the panel what their views on where they see the opportunities are emerging. Are investors on board? If I could start with you, Gilles. According to some estimates, 30 cents of private capital is unlocked by every $1 of public climate finance. I just wanted your view as a developer on accessibility of financing for the energy transition.
Okay, before I answer your question, just to give you a couple of magnitude, I think your first wind project that you were building is about, 200 megawatts wind project, so that's about 4 billion rand, or about 230 million US dollars. So we're speaking about big amounts already, straightforward. So what's happening is, I mean, the reason why there is more money coming from the public sector to the private sector is the private sector is a bit more conservative. They don't like to take too much risk, and especially at the inception of projects and the inception of the markets, I say the renewable energy markets, they don't like to take risk. They want someone else to take it. So that's why there's more public money coming in the early stage of projects. But the private sector is now coming in. Even private funds and family funds are coming in, actually funding this type of projects on different terms. I mean, we're seeing a big shift at the moment, especially in South Africa. I'm not going to speak about the rest of the continent because it's different. The market is now mature. I mean, the program that you mentioned, the REAP round, actually show the industry that the market is now mature and we can bank on it. So there's more money coming in from the private sector, from private funds, from green climate funds coming from Europe, actually are financing this project on different terms. We used to be doing deals in 20 years PPA terms. Now we're seeing 5-10 years PPAs, and even projects which are not, we build a project, we don't even have allocation of taker for 100% of the plants, and we can actually still finance them with that private fund. So it's shifting slowly, and it needs to market to mature, which I believe where South Africa is now.
And thank you, Gilles. Mohloana, as a coal mining company, are you seeing any particular constraints on your access to finance, or are you seeing capital made available as you enter on your own transition?
What we're seeing is, and then this is especially on the international front, not so much from local funders. We're seeing quite a few of them saying that they cannot fund thermal coal. And that's the reality that we expect will increase. We will see more of that. And then part of the way that we are thinking and approaching that is to make sure that some of the funding actually comes from our own balance sheet. We've actually made a public announcement to that effect that we are keeping a certain amount to assist us with our growth ambitions on our own balance sheet and funding it. Unfortunately, we are able to do that. So we recognize that is a challenge that we'll continue to have. We're not just seeing it with funders, we're also seeing insurance, and we're seeing some service providers who say the same. And that's the reality that we find ourselves in. But we think it's an opportunity for us to, while there is this transition, it's an opportunity for us to do something about it and not find ourselves in the same position in 10 years' time or in the future.
Great. And Kgashane, does IDC have any specific plans to mobilize finance for the energy transition?
We have quite an aggressive strategy to support decarbonization across the board, right? I don't know if we're still the largest funder of renewable projects historically in South Africa, but our exposure is by now over 13 billion rand in renewable projects. On the critical minerals side, which is a bit broader than battery, our exposure is 26 billion rand. Again, so the funding is there, and we're not slowing down. Right? We've got a lot more questions to answer when deploying financing into coal, for instance. Right? Some of our funding partners, I mean, we borrow money as well, so we have debt from international institutions, and they're not comfortable with deploying money into coal. So I think we have to be quite sensitive about how we support industry. There is still value there, right? We are still dependent on fossil fuels. They're entrenched. So it's not a matter of just walking away, particularly since we haven't built the replacement, you know? I don't know if nuclear is a swear word here. Or, you know what I mean? Like there's a whole program to be balanced, and you're never going to please everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm confident. Well, lastly, I'd just like to thank all of our panelists today. It's very insightful contributions. As I'm sure you're aware, energy transition presents many challenges for all of us, as well as the opportunities. So thank you all very much for your time, and panelists, thank you for your contributions.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.